All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Educator Exchange. This is the podcast where we talk all things Texas education related. I'm Seth Harrington. I'm going to be your host. And today I'm with a dear friend and colleague, Dr. Ellen Willoughby.
Hi, Seth. I'm super excited to be here with you.
So glad that you are here. And Ellen and I have a storied past. So we're not just colleagues from Region 13. We'll get into some of that as we move through some questions. Today we're going to be looking at what it means to be in back-to-school season. But before we get into tips and tricks and some of those other things, Ellen, if you could just, kind of tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about how you got started in education and then maybe even jump into how you ended up where you're at in Region 13.
Yeah. So education is actually a second career for me. I was a hairdresser in my past life and was inspired by Oprah Winfrey and an actual,
Aren't we all?
Yes, exactly. And an episode that they had, the Disney Teacher of the Year. And I decided to go back to school and get my undergrad and then got my master's, taught second grade. And I have then, where I met you actually, is I moved into a role as an instructional coach at a different district. And then I moved into being an assistant principal. So we worked together right after that.
We did.
Wasn't that the timeline of that, I think?
Yeah. So I had a really brief stint. So the year that I came in to that campus, it was like halfway through the spring.
Okay, that's right.
You were still an instructional coach at that time.
Okay.
But we didn't really cross paths a lot.
No.
You were a tornado of instructional expertise, and your skills were kind of dedicated elsewhere.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And then I came back as the principal of the same school and did that for a few years and then moved into a charter school for about 5 years. And I've been actually at Region 13 for 6 years. I just had my 6th-year anniversary.
I can't believe it's been 6 years.
Isn't that crazy?
Already.
But and look how great we look. I mean,
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, thanks for the background. Now, what is your role here at the Service Center?
Yeah, so I work in educator evaluation and leadership. So all things evaluation, T-TEST, TPES, which is the Texas Teacher Evaluation System, the Principal Evaluation System. I also do principal or leadership coaching, helping principals, a lot of times newer principals, to just kind of get their feet wet and get into the role because it is a really challenging role.
Yeah.
But then I also get to work alongside all these amazing people here at Region 13 and partner with them on just really supporting schools.
Yeah. So I feel really similarly about 13 as an organization. I feel like I kind of slipped through unnoticed a little bit, but everybody else, at least, that works here, I feel like it's filled with the D1 athletes of education. Everybody here is fantastic, brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise, and I mean, I would put you in the D1 athletes category.
Well, I appreciate that. I think what I love is that everybody here just really wants to do what's best for schools, and they keep students in mind and leaders in mind, and so and then the partnerships that we can build to then deeply support campuses and schools is really a cool aspect of being here for sure. Yeah. And I would put you in the D1 category as well, Seth.
Well, I may be riding the bench.
But please don't do a whole lot more sports analogies because I'm not into the sports.
That's okay. Well, speaking of things that are happening, whether it's extracurricular with schools in sports or things just on a daily basis, we're about to begin another school year. So this is kind of back to school season.
Yes.
And that's kind of our subject matter for today. And as you mentioned, we served together on a number of back to school years or ventures.
We did.
So do you remember? This is our opportunity for kind of story time. Do you remember anything in particular, fun stories, things that happened at the beginning of the school year while we worked together? Do you remember anything?
Yeah. One of the things that stands out to me first when I think of it's a little bit before school starts, it's when teachers are all back and we're all gearing up for the school year, is we did home visits. And I don't know if you remember those, that we had 750 something kids. And we went to, and I say we, all of our teachers, every human being on our campus went and visited every single home and met our kids and introduced ourselves. And it was super cool because people said, "Oh, they're not gonna let you into their homes." And half the time we were like, "Okay, we can't stay for dinner. Can
Yeah.
we've got 97 more houses to stop at."
Yeah,
So, do
yeah.
you remember that?
I do remember that. It was, not only is it a nice experience, I think for the kids and for the neighborhood, because, today, and we're in the greater Austin area,
Yeah,
it's super common for teachers to not live, in the same neighborhood
true.
as the students that they're serving. And
Yeah.
so like it's really helpful to be able to walk around and see where your kids live.
Yeah.
And it also breaks a little bit of that barrier. So like we were serving at an elementary
Mhm.
school, so maybe it's a little different for secondary, but at the elementary level, like if you see a student at the grocery store,
Oh, yeah.
they are in absolute like shock.
Shock. Like, "Oh,
They're
wait, don't you live at the campus?"
right. Yeah. Do you plug in the wall? So it breaks that barrier. You become a human,
Yeah, exactly.
which is not a bad thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. So I can remember a kind of, it did not seem super fun in the moment, but something that happened this was the year that I was on your kind of coaching staff. I was a
Oh, yeah.
literacy coach. So it was the first day of school. I'm super green. I'm fresh out of the classroom. And so like, I did not get the perennial like optics and PR
Mm,
training that
that
of
none of
course
us got.
that nobody gets. But I can remember on the first day, the Raptor
Oh,
system
yes.
on our campus went down. And those of you that aren't familiar with that, that is the system that's used for any visitor to a school campus. Your ID is scanned, and then you get the green light that you are lawfully allowed to be on campus. So that went down,
Yes.
and we had two choices. We could either let everybody in, or say nobody gets to come in. Again, different for secondary and
Oh,
elementary. At
yeah.
the elementary level, you got a lot of crying students,
And
right?
parents.
And a lot of crying parents.
Yes.
And I can remember parents just livid, saying,
Yeah.
"You're robbing us of the
Of her
opportunity to
Totally,
say
and we
goodbye."
kinda were. I mean, like,
Yeah.
the whole idea, dropping your kid off for their first day of pre-K or their first day of kindergarten is like a monumental time. I mean, we have
Yeah.
kindergarten graduations for that reason, like, it's a big deal, and to have to tell parents that, "Sorry, we can't do this," and it's for safety, but, like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was
The logic side of the brain's not
no,
working
it's
so
not.
much on
Absolutely,
those heightened
absolutely.
days. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I
So,
think that what we did well is we showed empathy because we had empathy. And we were then able to connect with our most upset parents afterwards and just like really let them know that this is not something that we wanted to have happen at all.
right.
And
Yeah. This isn't every day.
no, this is not
Yeah.
every day. And I don't remember what we did later, if we did anything particularly later to help with that, besides like having a lot of family engagement opportunities so
Yeah.
that our parents could get into their kids' classrooms and
Right.
get to know their teachers on a deeper level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. And I think that really showcases how, whether it's back to school or any other time during the year, you really have to balance this like proactive and
Yeah.
reactive kind of tightrope,
Yeah, you
right?
do. And I think it's about being the whole idea of like you plan for everything you can plan for so that you have time to deal with
Yeah.
the those kinds of challenges. Because if you're operating from as teachers as well as campus leaders, if you're operating from like, "Oh, I'll just figure it out as I go," then your focus is on the fires you have to put out and not on the things that you actually have control over.
Mm.
And what I remember is that we had such a strong system of what our morning was going to look like before the Raptor system meltdown happened that everybody was able to then like be on their toes and
Mm-hmm.
give parents and kids the best experience possible. Now,
Right.
mind you, it was chaos. It was absolute chaos, but the staff kept smiles on their faces. We continued to try to focus on the kids and making them not we had to calm parents down so that they would help calm the kids down so that the kids didn't feel like, why are you crying, mom, while you're
Right.
dropping me off
I
in this
thought we were
stranger's
good.
arms?
Yeah.
So yeah, there were a lot of learnings from there of that sometimes things don't go as you hope they will.
Yeah. And that is the story of back to school in general.
Yeah, and
Like,
teaching and
yeah,
leading. Yeah,
right.
for
And
sure.
beyond back to school. Um, back to school just in general, and hopefully nobody experiences that raptor thing. But
No.
what you talked about with kind of having to expect the unexpected a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, at the beginning of the year, you've got these kind of twin towers of serotonin and cortisol that are like, it's a real 50-50
Exactly.
mix. So, like, as we talk about back to school and the kinds of things that can help create a successful kind of return
Yeah.
to learning, um, let's get into tips and tricks.
Okay.
What are some things that can help?
For me, it's always about a system. Like,
Mm,
you have to have a system for everything. And I think a lot of times we also assume, like, oh, so and so knows what they're supposed to do. But I'm like, have you explicitly told them, like,
mhm.
what that expectation is? Perfect
Yeah.
example, like pick up and drop off, like from a leader's perspective. Those are the most stressful times besides lunch.
Mm,
To like, you have to have a system to ensure that what you can control can be controlled. And then when those random things happen, that you are able to activate in a way to deal with whatever the situation is. Like an
mm,
example is most of our kids rode buses, if you remember.
mhm.
And I remember right after Christmas break or winter break, we had, it was very icy. It was very, very cold. And our cafeteria had a little fire.
Yeah.
And when that
Yeah,
happens,
yeah.
you have to evacuate a building of kids getting off buses. And we don't want our littles to be in the cold. So we had to put them, luckily, we had empty portables. But because we had processes in place, even though we hadn't practiced what happens if the cafeteria has a fire, we had practiced enough of how we help stay calm as the adults to get kids out. Now, of course, that's a big example. But for smaller and just like your daily kind of things, it's like, what are your systems and processes for all of the functions that you have on your campus?
Mm,
And how is everybody scrubbed in on what their role is in that?
mm. Okay. So when you talk about systems and processes,
Mhm.
let's talk about because there's multiple layers here,
Oh,
right? Like
yeah,
you've
for
got
sure.
back to school from the staff perspective,
Yeah, for sure.
right?
Mhm.
Back to school for the students, back to school for administrators is maybe a little bit different, but
Yeah.
everybody is kind of learning systems.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
like, what does it look like for, let's say, we know that we have a rising percentage, and it's always been pretty high, of
Mhm.
0-year teachers
Yes.
on like the average campus.
Yeah.
What are a few systems that, those 0-year, maybe we say 0 to 2-year novice
Mhm.
teachers, like what is the best bang for their buck? Like what are some of the best systems that they could try to implement at the beginning of the year?
Yeah, I think that that comes really from the leader of the
Mm,
campus to create a framework for the support will look like for those new teachers or the ones with less experience.
yeah,
So, for instance, I know one thing that we did is we set them up with a mentor. And so there was another teacher on the campus who, I mean, they didn't have to have years of experience, but they had at least, a couple of years under their belts
sure.
in our system. And
Hmm.
so they understood how things ran at our school. And they were there to be able to be a touch point and a regular check in to ensure that that teacher was feeling supported. And I think it's also around like you as a leader, you can't do it all. So that's where you build the systems
That's a
around
tough
that.
one.
Yeah, it is. It is very, really tough because, like, you want to mentor all of the new teachers. And it doesn't mean you don't, it's just you're very strategic in that.
Mm,
And so I think, like, if I was a new teacher on a campus, I would reach out if they don't have a system put in place to reach out to other people on your grade level team. I mean, I remember as a brand new teacher, I was the new one there. The three other teachers had all been there for years. And so I immediately kind of sussed out kind of who I felt like I had the best connection with. And I said, hey, can you be my go to person?
mm.
And we informally checked in with each other. And that helped make the year really good, actually, even with a lot of challenges that we had.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like what I'm hearing as you talk about systems, routines, uh, things that are kind of, I mean, not rote, but not
Yeah.
necessarily instruction or content related, maybe I should say.
No,
Like
absolutely.
these routines and things are kind of, well, ancillary is not quite the right word, but it's not, there aren't readiness and supporting routines,
No, no,
right?
exactly. Yeah,
So,
it's kind of the non-glamorous part, if there's
yeah.
any glamorous parts in it, of the work, because you have to do those things to get to the instruction.
Mm.
And the other part is relationships. So relationships are actually built when you build in systems. So for instance,
Oh, that's
if,
interesting.
as I'm building a mentor system, let's say, well, I'm then the relationship between me as the principal and the people that are mentoring, there has to be a relationship there because there's trust.
Hmm.
I'm trusting you to support the teachers. And then they are building relationships with the teachers that they're supporting, which then what does it all come down to is what are we doing for our kids? And
Mm.
so those relational things, such as a system, I mean, it really was a system of doing the home visits because that was a huge thing we needed to orchestrate to have happen in a safe and effective way because we just did it in one afternoon. Like it was
Yeah.
literally one afternoon. And then we also had a couple of opportunities like at apartment complex, um, common areas. So
Hmm.
if parents didn't want us to come to their homes, they could come. So it's like we have to think of how the systems support the work to make effective systems, and then we have to implement them with fidelity. And then
Mm.
that leaves a lot more room for really strong instruction and really great relationships among teachers and students and staff. So it sounds like I said, it's just kind of like, oh, systems.
Yeah.
But they really are, they free you up to do all the other cool stuff,
Yeah. It
whatever
is.
role you have.
Those systems, I feel like, I promise I'm not going to bring another sports analogy.
Well, if you do, I
And
might just ask you to explain it, but that's okay. Or I can just pretend I know.
it's kind of the PT, it's the physical therapy.
Yeah,
Like
okay,
if
now
you
we're
want,
medical. Good.
yeah,
Got
if
it.
you want your body to function or you want your classroom to function in a good way,
Yeah.
like even though they're boring, like you've got to do like 100 reps of this one thing,
Yeah.
and it's not miraculous, but it works,
Yeah,
right?
totally. Yeah,
It
it's
works.
like the food and the water of the body.
Mm,
Like if you don't have those things, then you're just kind of
yeah.
figuring it out as you go. Like, is this
Yeah.
going to be enough?
Well, and that moves into what you at the very beginning you were talking about, uh, how it's easy to fall into the trap of just like constantly putting out fires.
Yes.
And speaking of the time that we spent, I remember an AP that was at that campus who was fantastic with students. I can remember one morning him like kind of
Yeah.
barreling down this hall and I looked at him and I said, "You going to put out a fire?" And he goes, "I'm trying to keep them from starting."
There you
And
go.
it
Yes.
was
And it
like,
was great. Unless there was a
that's what it
snake in your
was.
computer room.
Yes, yeah,
That
that's
that
true.
that is
Yeah.
when that was a fire he did not want to fight. Or
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, he was incredible. He was so good at that. Like he thought ahead of things
Hmm.
to and it was all built on relationships as well. So he was
Yeah,
probably going to help a student who was maybe
for sure.
struggling
Yep.
and to intervene as early as possible to prevent. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like the phrase that he used to say was, "We want to be more fire marshal than firefighter."
Yep.
So you need to know how to put them out, but mostly we're looking around and making sure that there's enough distance between the cabinets and the ceiling.
There you go.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
um, so, okay. Uh, you've talked a lot about systems
Mhm.
and kind of the setup to kind of prepare yourself for a successful year.
Yeah.
Do you see the kind of, I don't know, this might be kind of a cortisol response or a stress response, but do you see the jump into content as being kind of a common pitfall at the beginning of a
Mm.
school year?
That's such an interesting question, Seth, because it's also kind of I don't want to say controversial, but it is something that
Okay.
people have very different trains of thought of what needs to happen. I used to be as a teacher, like my first 2 weeks were about building my systems with my kids and teaching second graders how to walk in line and, and building that community, but we weren't touching really a lot of content. But over the
Hmm.
years, and that I truly was like dying on that hill.
Yeah.
But over the years, what I have seen is that you have to build them at the same time. Because if you're
Mm.
building a system of classroom management, because that's usually what you're starting with, and building that community, they also have to know how to do that while they're doing academics. And so
You need a medium.
you do.
Yeah.
Yes, because it's like, yeah, I can sit by Seth and keep my hands and feet to myself, but then now we need to work with manipulatives together and we have to do this math thing. But we haven't learned how, for me to not steal all the blue ones because that's my favorite color. So it's those kinds of things. And I think even as because I was in a middle school assistant principal, that it's the same thing. Because especially sixth graders coming from fifth grade,
Hmm.
it's a
Hmm.
whole new world for them. And so it really is like, how do we build that academic? And again, people may have a different viewpoint, and that's fine. For me, it's you have to build those two things together.
Okay.
It's not like you're giving them a test on the first week of school, but it's like,
Yeah.
how are you integrating in the academic component of what school is,
Okay.
especially the younger that they are, so
Okay.
that they see that there's that connection.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's transition for just a second.
Okay.
Let's talk about um, things, tips and tricks, maybe for teachers. So
Yeah.
you're whether you're totally new to it or you've been in the game for 20 plus years. Back to school can be again a super joyful time, but it's also a little stressful. So
Yeah.
like, what are some ways that you have seen both veteran teachers or new teachers kind of, I don't know, balance their mental load
Yeah, the
or
joy and the
their
stress.
yeah
Yeah.
what's helpful.
So I think one of the things I first want to name is like, it is really hard to be a teacher.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's definitely harder than it was when I was a teacher. We're asking teachers and leaders to do a lot more with a lot less. But in that vein of back to school and kicking it off, I think a lot of, especially at the elementary level, getting like it's so important for us, and I say us because this is how I felt, to get our rooms all like beautiful and just so inviting. And over the years, I've learned that that is good, but it's not necessary. And it can
Mm.
relieve some of the stress. You want it to be clean and organized,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also something really cool about like having your kids kind of help build that
Mm.
what your community looks like in your classroom.
Yeah.
And so I think that that can help relieve some of the stress of like taking off the pressure that your room has to look like a Pinterest board on day one.
Mm. Oh, that's
Um,
good.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because I mean, I was like, I need to get all the borders up and everybody's name tags written and, all of
Yeah.
those things. And there are certain things you want to do. Like, you probably want to put the nameplates on their desks so you know
Mm-hmm.
who they are and they know where they're sitting. But it's really about kind of being minimal at that point, so that you can give your time to thinking about what are the again, systems, it all really does go back to that. What are the things that you need to implement within your classroom to create the environment that you want for your kids? And so in their learning. And so it's not just about the physical environment. I think taking some of that off your plate early on can help relieve that. I also think having building those partnerships with your families is
Mm.
super helpful at the
Okay.
beginning of the year. So like before, like if you were a student in my class and maybe you're a third grader and I've heard how Seth was in second grade, instead of me making assumptions about that, I'm going to reach out to your parents and just get to know you, get to know them and
Yeah.
learn more
Yeah.
about you as a student. So I feel like that's a great return on the investment.
Okay.
Um, and
Okay.
especially if you're new to this work, you're not going to get it
Yeah.
right off the bat. Like you're
Right.
going to make some mistakes.
Yeah.
And so just be open to that opportunity to learn and don't chase perfection.
Mm.
Just really chase doing a good job.
Yeah. 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 That's great. Those are super practical ones. I
Yeah, I
love
think that's the other thing. Practicality
it.
is the key. Like,
Yeah.
and the more practical you can be in that, it takes off a lot of that pressure. I mean,
Yeah.
because it's already a lot of pressure just as the job is as it is. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I can remember, speaking of practical advice, I guess this goes beyond the beginning of the school year, but I think it can be especially relevant at the beginning. I can remember a mentor that I had observing my classroom and telling me afterward, had a lot of wonderful feedback, but I remember one that was like, wow, that's really specific, was he was like, if you would just like like, don't talk quite so fast.
Yeah.
And I think what he was getting at was like, hey, if you slow down your speech a little bit, you'll be amazed at how that will kind of translate to helping you feel a little bit more calm
True.
too.
Yes.
So, I mean, I don't remember if I was just like a fast talker in general or not, but that was something that was helpful for me. So when I was delivering whole group instruction, to think about like, how loud am I having to talk right now?
Right.
Because especially that first week,
Oh,
if you're
yeah.
new, and whether you're new or not, if you haven't been doing it for a couple of months,
Yeah. You'll lose your
expect,
voice.
yeah, expect to lose your voice in the first week of school. And you're probably not sick, but you
Yeah.
might get sick that
Yeah.
week too. But uh, yeah, but everybody's starting back.
Yeah, and what that made me think of is also as new to the school year, not even just new to the profession, is you need to be very self-reflective and you need to check in with your nervous system. And I think that that's like a
Mm,
great example of like thinking about slowing down your voice is checking in with your nervous system because I mean you're on all day long. Like you are teaching and you are trying to, you're getting these kids to learn and you're probably really passionate about it, but it is exhausting. So like how are you like checking in with yourself? And I think kind of having a plan of what that looks like for you as a teacher is something that can really help you as you move through because the burnout is so high because it
mhm.
is a really hard job. But I love that just that one little, thing changed kind of how your whole nervous system operated.
Yeah, 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 makes a big difference. And, it translates to other areas too. So like
Yep.
that same concept moves to, I was guilty of this probably more often than not, but like actually eat lunch,
Oh
during
yeah.
your lunch. It's so easy to be like, oh man, that's 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I could get a lot done in 30 minutes. I got to
Right.
get my classroom set up and, do this or that. And, you mentioned burnout. And we're also setting up systems, right? So
Yes.
it's not just for students.
No,
If you
absolutely.
can kind of discipline yourself and say, well, this is the time when I need to get to campus in order to
Yeah.
feel like when my first period of students walk in the door, or when I have to walk down and pick my
Right.
kids up, wherever, that I'm ready to go, then
Yes.
you get there at that time,
Yeah.
right? And if you know that, as is, I think, reasonable for most human beings, like I need a minute over lunch.
Yeah.
If that's not in the teacher's lounge, that's
That's
fine.
fine.
Go into your classroom and shut off the lights
Yeah,
for a minute
totally.
if you need to.
Absolutely. Yes.
But, whatever that looks like, get those systems started early. Okay, so we're going to move into kind of a segment, okay, that
Okay.
we're going to call pass or fail.
Okay.
All
Oh,
right.
okay.
So I'm
Pressure's
going to
on.
give you, yeah, I'm going to
Drink
give
some
you
water.
a few, yeah, take a sip. I'm going to give you a few different quotes, and I want you to kind of chime in and either say, pass, I'm with that, or fail, no, that's no
Okay.
good.
So,
And, maybe give us a
yeah.
little bit for why, okay?
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, first one, uh, as long as students walk in the door and then got on the bus and left, it was a successful first day at school.
Pass.
Okay, tell me why.
Safe. You just want them to be safe and fed on the first
Okay,
day of school and that they get home safely.
okay.
Because, and especially as a campus leader, can I tell a short
Yeah,
story?
yeah, yeah. Hit it.
Um, that my first year as a principal, on the first day, one of my pre-K kids didn't get home on the bus that they were supposed to be on.
Oh, mercy.
Yes, and that is a very big panic for all humans involved.
Yeah.
He was found, he was fine. He had fallen asleep um, in the very, very back seat on the bus. And
It's a
they,
story as old
yes,
as time.
exactly,
Long
exactly.
day.
So ideally, yes, because there's a lot of people coming in later, like there's a lot of different moving parts. And so get them there safely, give them have them have some joy. I think that needs to be added in there. Get them fed and get them home safely for day one. Now,
Okay.
after that,
Yeah.
then we move into, I mean, we want that every single day, but then, we're building in all that academic in between all of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So pass on the first
Pass,
one.
pass.
All
Yes.
right. Next one. I remember hearing this. Don't smile until Thanksgiving.
Oh, fail, 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 fail.
Yeah.
I do not like that. I don't like it at secondary. It reminds me of the professor who's like, nobody gets an A in my class. I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
I feel like that when kids and parents feel like you are somebody who cares about them. You have very clear rules and expectations and
Hmm.
norms in your classroom that you don't have to be like an angry person.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't understand it, and it's
Yes.
just something I also couldn't do, like, it just isn't my personality, but what I've seen is when people do that, they losing opportunities to build relationships.
Yeah. Yes. I think many of us that have been around education for a while remember capturing kids' hearts.
Yes, oh, I love
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love capturing kids' hearts,
Yeah.
and you can do that with high schoolers because 'cause they're still kids. I
Yeah.
mean, I had some huge football player 8th graders who, like, once I tried to stop in the hall because I thought they were dads walking down the hallway, but they were, like, the kids, and they turned around and were like, "What, Miss Willoughby?" And I'm like, "Go to class." But I would give them stickers and pencils when they were doing, and they were just as excited
Yeah.
as my kindergartners.
Okay. All right. Okay. So fail on not smiling until
Yes,
Thanksgiving.
smile, people, smile.
Yeah. Smile. Okay. New teachers should not try to be innovative in the first month. They should try to be consistent.
I would say pass.
Okay.
I feel like that, like, do something well first. That's like the basic expectation before you innovate. Um, unless
Okay.
you've kind of talked through it with somebody.
Okay.
Because I
Okay.
think that it can get in the way. But I also love innovation. So I'm struggling with that one. But I think I would have follow-up questions for the person, like
Okay.
what
Partial credit?
partial credit. Yeah, let's give it partial credit. Yes.
Okay, all right. It sounds like what you're getting at is at the beginning of the year, new teachers kind of before they can think outside of the box, they need the box first.
Yeah,
So
they
you
need
got
to
to kind of,
understand the box. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
for sure.
Okay,
Because it affects so many different things.
yeah,
And also, again, depending on what the innovation is, because there are sometimes people have really great ideas that just can't happen in a school.
sure. Yeah, yeah. Okay, all right. This is the last one.
Okay.
New teachers do not need more inspiration in August. They need examples, scripts, and time.
I think they need both.
Okay, partial credit
Partial
again.
credit
Yeah,
again.
tell me
Yeah.
more.
You need to be motivated. Like, you can't just be like, "We can do it."
Yeah.
And then as a new teacher, I'm like, "How do I do it?" So it's like you wanna inspire, but you also wanna help build structures to support.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
it's both.
All right, that's
Yeah.
good. All right, well, before we close, I want to give you the opportunity to kind of plug something that you've got going on here in the coming months. So,
Okay. Yeah.
what do you got for us?
Well, first of all, just if people are using T-tests and T-PES and those different appraisal trainings, make sure Region 13 has a lot of different offerings for that. But one of the things that I get to do, because there really is a get to, is leadership coaching. So if
Okay.
there are principals or assistant principals who want somebody, I always say I don't have a dog in the fight in the sense like I'm not somebody's supervisor, um, but I can be a thought partner, and that's really what the role is for me when I'm coaching is let me help you think through the things that you're thinking about or struggling with. And it's a safe space for that. And we can come up with ideas, and it can function in a lot of different ways, just depending on what you're looking for. But definitely, leadership coaching is something that
Mm,
we offer, and you can look it up on the Region 13 website, and they'll probably have a link available for you. And reach out, and you and I can have a one on one, or the not I mean, you and I can have a one-on-one, but me and the
if
person
I
who
need
wants
some
the
leadership
coaching,
coaching, I mean, I could use that too. So,
that we can sit down and really talk about what your goals are and support you in that one-on-one way. And we can also do like small cluster grouping as well. So if you're in a small
okay.
rural school district and you have like 3 brand new principals and you're a superintendent and you need somebody who's going to come and just kind of help them muddle through that work, that's really what lights me up in my work.
Ellen, thank you so
No,
much
this was so
for
fun.
joining
Thank you
today.
for having me.
Yeah, yeah, you got it. So, again, this has been the Educator Exchange, is the podcast where we talk all things Texas education related, adjacent, and we're bringing people into pedagogy. So, Dr. Ellen Willoughby, thank you so much for joining, and we look forward to the next conversation.
Yes, excellent. Thank you, Seth.
Yeah. Okay.